But today, I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. You better wake up for the pay stub, or you'll pay up. Don't make love to the game, bruh, fuck the game up. Change up, rearrange stuff to your greatness. Same us for the way up, play the game, bruh.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest, there ain't no way I'm ever stopping.
I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top,
I'm always flirting with pain, she like to hurt me and maim. I'm always working to change, but she's still lurking the same. I keep on building this dynasty while the haters be trying me, but they hate from inside.
Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Unscripted here on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. Dustin Reese, aka Stat Guy, your host today, and joined by, I don't know if he's recovered yet from this weekend, but he's probably a little happier after last night, Jay McLovin. Jay, how are you?
Well, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I wasn't doing good up until that Eagles game, and then I was... Because, misery loves company, and so, yeah, I'm doing well now. I'm doing much, much better, and I know we got a lot to unpack on that subject matter.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole Super Wildcard Weekend thing now has been going on. This was the third year that they added that seventh seed to the playoffs, and I know when they first did that, people had a lot of mixed feelings about it because you had 2 playoff games on Saturday, you had 3 on Sunday, you had the 1 on Monday or whatever it was. Like, the whole scheduling was kind of weird. But I think it's kind of grown on people now, especially only having the top overall seed have a bye week, and then you kind of have weekends that we had this past weekend. So let's just start with the first game of the weekend with the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans. And when you look at the score, 45-14, that game was a lot closer than what that score shows early on. But when you have back-to-back pick sixes on back-to-back throws like Joe Flacco did, with one of those throws most likely giving Cleveland a field goal at worst, that was literally a 17-point swing in a matter of about 40 seconds, and it took what was a competitive game and turned it into what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 45-14. I think a lot of us expected a much tighter game than what we actually got. And, this game really solidified or re-solidified why I still feel like, and I know a lot of people, look, we all know the NFL MVP is most likely is going to go to Lamar Jackson. Okay, I get that. We all know that Christian McCaffrey put up some hellified good numbers at the running back spot over in San Fran. But I'll tell you, man, if you're, this CJ Stroud kid, he already has Rookie of the Year locked up. We know that for a damn good and well fact. But if you don't have him in serious consideration for your NFL MVP, then you're not watching this kid at all. Because this kid is coming up in every clutch moment that I have seen as of yet. I mean, the passing, the play, the running of the legs, escaping, the quick drops, the read of the defenses, the ball placement, the whole 9 yards. This kid has literally just hit in all directions, and it's just amazing to me. Man, I gotta tell you, that guy, and I'm not a Houston Texans fan, but looking at this kid and the way he's playing, and I'm not even an Ohio fan. I hate every quarterback that's ever come out of the University of Ohio for various reasons. But this is the first kid that's come out of Ohio that has me saying, "Oh my God, and Ohio did not infect him."
Yeah, and that's I've been kind of on the same wavelength that you've been on for quite a while, where outside of Craig Krenzel, there's been no Ohio State quarterback that's ever had success in the NFL. And you look at just the recent history. J.T. Barrett, Justin Fields, Cardale Jones, and all these big Ohio State quarterbacks that were once quarterbacks in college, they were forced to change positions in the NFL because they just couldn't play the way they played at Ohio State once they got into the NFL. And in Justin Fields' case, I think Justin Fields is going to be a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be at the level that anyone expected him to be, but I also don't think he's nearly as bad as what his play has showed the last couple of years, because I think play calling has had a big thing to do with that. But C.J. Stroud is the first Ohio State quarterback that has not only proven that he belongs, but he just looks unbelievably in command of his offense, in command of his team, and just the way he was able to read the Cleveland defense, which came into that game as the number one defense in the NFL, and just shred it the way he did. Houston's going to be set up for long-term success for the next decade with him under center and just some of those other young pieces around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to tip my hat off to two head coaches in particular that I think are the exact kind of coach I wish the Cowboys had. And number one is Dan Campbell with Detroit, and the way he went into that locker room and changed the entire culture, the entire team, the entire perception, if you will, revitalized golf, and really put that city back on the map in terms of football. And secondly is DeMeco Ryans and what he's done with this Texans team, and how he went in there and took a team that was spiraling down with a Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien and all this crap, bad trades, all the stuff that's gone on within that team to basically promote an unstable environment and give them a sense of stability for one, a sense of being able to draft better for two, which also I'll give Nick Casario part of that credit too, because they brought him in the same time they brought in DeMeco. So both of these kind of guys have really righted that ship on different levels. And then just the ability to change the culture and infuse a winning direction is just paramount. If I could have either one of those two kind of infectious coaches come into the Cowboys organization, we would be better for it, brother.
Yeah, it's funny that you said kind of what you said about DeMeco Ryans, because a couple of years ago, and more than a couple of years ago, now we're going to go 5, 6, even 7 years ago, when Sean McVay was hired for the Rams job, you had that 4-year window where all these NFL teams that were looking for head coaches would pick from the Kyle Shanahan tree. They would pick from the Sean McVay tree because there were these young offensive-minded coaches like Zach Taylor in Cincinnati comes to mind, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota comes to mind, like, that was the trend for a while. But now you're looking at DeMeco Ryan, former NFL player. He had a long career, but it wasn't like a standout career where you could say, oh, this guy's a Hall of Famer. Dan Campbell, former NFL player, kind of same situation. He was a good tight end when he was with the Dolphins and some of those teams that he was with, but he was never one of those tight ends where you could be like, oh, yeah, he's a game-breaking tight end. I think that could be a trend that you start to see now where you have these. Antonio Pierce, you could even use the same example with the Raiders. I think that's going to be the next trend, as opposed to hiring these young and upcoming assistants, maybe giving some of these former players a shot as a head coach, because in my opinion, once you've been able to play in this league as long as some of these players have, you can relate to these players a lot better than some of these coaches can. And ultimately, if you can create a culture where you have that unity in the locker room, which is what everyone says about DeMeco Ryans, that is just as big as having a successful coaching staff around you.
Yeah, and another thing that I really like about this Texas team, I want to kind of focus a little bit on C.J. Stroud. And the reason why I don't want to focus on him is, I think everybody will tell you that when we were doing our fantasy league, none of us had Noah Brown, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, in those top-tier wide receiver pickets, right? None of us had that. And I don't even think that those kinds of guys were on the radar until maybe 6th or 7th round in some cases, depending on how deep your league is.
Yep.
And I got to be honest with you, CJ has literally came in and he has made these guys into incredible wide receivers, because he takes what he has, he works with it, and he makes it shine. He made Tank Dell shine. He made Noah Brown shine. And when both of those guys go down to injury, he turns his attention to Nico Collins, and now Nico Collins looks like the best damn thing since sliced bread. And then Dalton Schultz is Dalton Schultz. We know we were getting to Dalton when he came over from Dallas. So, that was a great security blanket for him. But this guy has a potential to make all receivers look better than probably what they really even are. And I'm going to get probably a lot of flack when I say this. But as much as a good, elite, and great quarterback as Aaron Rodgers was, he didn't have the ability to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like he didn't have the ability because he was so fed up with the quote unquote inexperienced receiving core that he had that he shipped out, and Jordan Love came in and resurrected all that receiving group and made them the Romeo Dobbs, the Reeds, and etc. And that's what I don't like about Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he has the ability to elevate other receivers that otherwise would be thrown away to the next level. And I will tell you, Jordan Love seems to be kind of doing it over there. And CJ Stroud has definitely done it.
Yeah, and it's like what you kind of just said about the whole receiving side of things. Now we're going to get to that second game with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins where CJ Stroud has that ability to get all these young receivers on the same page, and they're catching everything. But then you go to a team like Kansas City, who led the NFL in drops this season.
Right.
Outside of Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, Patrick Mahomes, you can make the case, had the worst year of his career, but how much of that can you put on him when you look at how poorly his wide receiver group is? And for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career, it's been the defense that has really carried that team this season more so than the offense, and that defense showed up again on Saturday night against the Dolphins. I mean, granted, negative 25-degree wind chill is not something that anybody in Miami is accustomed to. So without even playing a single down, Miami was already at a disadvantage because of that cold. But
right.
It typically doesn't get that cold in Kansas City either. So you can't really say the Chiefs were prepared for it. But for whatever reason, once the playoffs come, the Chiefs flip a switch. And when they flip that switch, it's very hard to kind of shut off. And yes, it wasn't perfect. Yes, it wasn't this explosive Chiefs that we have seen in the past. But in my opinion, that was probably the best that the Chiefs have looked all year in their game against Miami.
Yeah, Rob Scott, I do think Pacheco, is doing well, right? I mean, I think he had, what did he have? He had 89 yards on 24 carries. 3.7 yards and a touchdown. So he had a pretty decent game, honestly. I'm not going to say it was outstanding, but it was a good game. And when you take the weather into consideration and what they had to deal with the weather, maybe what I'm saying is out of pocket because when you look at the weather and how hard it hurts and things like that, you got to kind of factor that in. So I think Pacheco had a good game. He did what he needed to do to get the run game where it needed to be. But I want to put my main focus on Rashee Rice. Oh, my God. This guy balled out at 130 on 8 catches and a touchdown. I mean, come on, man. Give this man his due. I mean, he stepped in where that would have been normally Tyreek Hill's job. Rashee Rice definitely stepped up and filled that gap. And I got to be honest with you, man. We're kind of talking the receiving core a little bit. I'm not exactly as impressed with Travis Kelce this season as I have been in previous. And again, I call it the Taylor Swift effect. I feel like once that celebrity gets into you, she just changes you a little bit. And I don't even know if Travis Kelce is getting civilianized, not in that warrior-like status mode, the jabroni attacking mode that, he's been in over the last, it's almost like he got civilianized, like he got settled down, like he doesn't have that edge and that fire like he had last season. And that kind of worries me for Kansas City.
I mean, you see that all the time, too, because look at when Aaron Rodgers was dating Danica Patrick and Olivia Munn a couple of years ago. His play wasn't at the typical Aaron Rodgers level. And the moment that he breaks up with Patrick and the moment that he breaks up with Olivia Munn, then Aaron Rodgers goes and plays at an MVP level. So I can kind of see the same thing. I've been saying that same thing about Travis Kelce for a while, where he's dropped way more passes this year than he's dropped in the past. Yes, he was injured early in the season, but it just seems like all year, and for the most part, since he's really been an item with Taylor Swift, it just seems that all year that Travis Kelce's been off. He just doesn't seem to have that same fire that he's had in the past. He doesn't seem to have that same hunger, that same motivation that you could always see in the field every time he was playing. Yes, I mean, he still ended up with like 990 yards, and if they would have played him that final game of the season, he would have had over 1,000 yards anyways. But yeah, he just didn't seem like the Travis Kelce of old this season. And for the Chiefs offense to be at their best, he does need to be at that Travis Kelce of old, but at least they got a guy in Rashee Rice who's now emerged as, you could say, the number one wide receiver in Kansas City. You have Isaiah Pacheco, who emerged as the number one running back last year towards the end of the season and now kind of took that role by the horns and is not going to give it back up. And you can tell, like, Patrick Mahomes knows that he's going to need more wide receiver help next year. But you look at the wide receivers in this upcoming draft, you look at the wide receivers that are going to be in free agency next year, Kansas City is going to bring in at least 2 wide receivers to help Patrick Mahomes out. So if their defense can continue to play the way they played this season, if they continue to play the way they played against the Dolphins in that wild card round, you add more weapons to that offense and guys that can consistently catch the football, Kansas City's not going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this, and we're going to talk more about this on Thursday when we do our NFL predictions. But, you know, you can kind of get away with this a little bit against Miami for a couple of reasons why they got away with it a little bit. Number one, I think the cold definitely affected Miami horribly. Number two, you know, I felt like, you know, Miami's defense still has been exposed due to the Chubb injury, the Howard injury, and so forth. So I do think that they kind of got Miami on a disadvantage. I don't think they're going to be able to do that or catch Buffalo at that same kind of disadvantage, right? This Buffalo team is geared up a different kind of way. So, and we're going to get more of that on Thursday. I'm just trying to the only point I'm really wanting to make out of all that is, yo, Pat, yo, Travis, yo, Andy Reid, and offensive and defensive coordinators and receivers and defense and Charles Smith, whether that Jones Smith, whether that defensive dude. Look, you got away with one with Miami, okay? Don't go up there and try to do Buffalo like that, because Buffalo's a different breed and you're going into their territory. You're going to Bill's Mafia. So I think you need to take this week and you need to really get that dog in the fight. And if I may, Travis, I think you need to take a sabbatical from Taylor Swift for at least a week and a day, and let this man get back in the fight.
This is also going to be the first road playoff game that Patrick Mahomes has ever played, which is also going to be kind of, I think, one of the bigger storylines that we talk about later in the week. But as Rob says here, Miami needs to solve the problems offensively as well against better teams, which he's right. You look at the Miami team this year, they were 11-6, but they only had one win against an above 500 team, and that was that Week 17 win against Dallas at home. So, I mean, until they can prove that they can beat a good team consistently, no one's going to take this Miami team seriously, because from an offensive side of things, yes, they can score points with the best of them. But when you finally face a good team like the 49ers or the Ravens or any, like, especially the Ravens, who completely blew them out of Baltimore and sent them flying back down to Florida. I mean, when you face a good team that has a good defense and that can actually stop your offense, it's going to be a tough time for Miami until they can prove that they consistently can beat these good teams. And until that happens, Buffalo's still going to be the class of that AFC East, because they actually know how to beat good teams.
Yeah. And, you know, and I'll tell you, man, Kansas City gave a lot of openings for Miami to crawl back into it. I mean, they had 3 fumbles and they lost 1 out of the 3. You know, there was definitely some room there for Miami. It's just, I don't know, you know, when I watched Tua throw the ball, and Stat Guy, I know you saw this, it was like he was like 3 feet, 2 feet, 4 feet, whatever, but he was off target like horribly on a lot of those throws. Like, it wasn't even close to the receiver he was actually intending it for.
Yeah, it's those Hawaii hands. He's not used to that kind of weather.
And that's right. And at some level, Tua is going to have to toughen up a little bit if he wants to be able to compete, you know, going against these teams that play in the North come playoff time, because it's not going to go away.
Exactly.
You know?
And now we'll get into Sunday, where Jay had a wonderful day on Sunday afternoon watching his Cowboys go back to being the Cowboys of the past 30 years in the playoffs, can I say?
Yeah.
Jordan Love decided to take the Cowboys out back and beat them like a runaway. And Dak Prescott had no answers besides throwing interceptions to Jair Alexander and Darnell Savage. And Mike McCarthy had that straight-faced look on his face like he was late for a buffet and couldn't get there in time. What were your thoughts of the Cowboy-Packer game? I mean, there's a lot of people that had Green Bay winning, but I don't think anyone predicted the score to be what it was and just how badly dominated the Packers were against the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. This game was a failure, just like the Eagles game was a failure on multiple levels, just like the Eagles on multiple levels. It's almost like watching the Cowboys all over again. When I was watching that Eagles game, it was like I was watching deja vu because I saw a lot of the same issues over there that I did with us. And what I mean is the Cowboys were not prepared, period. They were not prepared for this game at all. And Dan Quinn, I don't know what you were thinking. You know, all year we're playing the line of scrimmage, we're attacking the line of scrimmage, we're challenging receivers at the line of scrimmage, and we're putting pressure on the quarterback. We're getting to the quarterback. You know, things were great. And then you walk into this game, and I see the cornerbacks 5 to 10 yards off the receivers, and I'm like, what are we doing? That was number one. Number two, I didn't even see us put pressure on Jordan Love not one damn time throughout the entire game. I didn't see one blitz. I didn't want to see one hurry-ups. I didn't see nothing. Jordan Love was back there sipping pina coladas and margaritas and tossing touchdown bombs all day. You want to know why? Because, and this is what I really can't understand. If you're going to play your cornerbacks 5 to 10 yards off the receiver, and then the receiver catches the ball and there's not a cornerback around, well, where the hell are they going? Honestly, where are they going?
They were following Aaron Jones is what I think they were doing. And then all of a sudden they realized that 5 guys were on the left side of the field and Joe Musgrave is 45 yards wide open on the right side of the field at the 30-yard line.
Yeah. That's just nuts to me, man. It really is just nuts. And I don't understand. You know, I look at it and I think about it, like, what could they have done? And I don't know, man. I mean, I think Dan Quinn, there's 4 teams looking at Dan Quinn right now for a coaching job. Mm-hmm. And I'd say good luck. Have fun with that. I look at Mike McCarthy and I'm just like, good luck. Have fun with that. It's just, Kyle Shanahan. I don't know who's calling offensive plays over there because Kyle, I know it's McCarthy calling the plays. But what is Kyle Shanahan's role? He's not developing anybody. He's not doing anything with them. Like what's going on over there? You know, you got the CeeDee Lamb. They hardly used. They hardly ran the ball with Pollard. I mean, I'm going to ask you something about that.
I'm going to ask you something about that really quick because
go ahead, absolutely.
Because Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olsen were talking about it the whole first half. CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott were on another planet on Saturday. They were like in sync the entire season. Like they could read each other's minds. They knew where the ball was going and whatnot. The entire first half. CeeDee Lamb is yelling at Dak Prescott for whatever reason. Dak Prescott is yelling at CeeDee Lamb for whatever reason. I'm sitting here like we're 18 games into the season, counting obviously the 17-game regular season and now the wild card game. How in the hell do you go from being on the same page for 17 weeks to all of a sudden being on a completely different page in the playoffs?
Jay, sorry about that. Yeah, I know. Hey, say again. I'm sorry, man. I got
how Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb were like just completely out of sync that entire first half. You saw them yelling at each other basically on every pass, and I'm just sitting here saying, you guys are on the same page better than any quarterback wide receiver duo pretty much the entire season through 17 weeks. How do you go from being on the same page to 17 weeks to looking so lost in the wild card game to the point where you're not even?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of weird things that I don't think anybody can explain because it doesn't make sense. The team looked like they went out there and they were just out there to fill the role. They weren't out there to win. They weren't out there to compete. They were just going through the motions of a game just to get it over with. It was what it seemed like to me. I saw no dog in the fight. I saw no hunger in the strike. I saw nothing. And I think that's where Jerry Jones was saying he was floored. I'd be floored too. If my team went out there and looked like they were ready to go home and call it a day before they even took the first snap, you know, that tells me there's issues. Now, they have a great sideline view of Curse talking to the defense, getting them riled up, say we're going to take it to them. Who's the best tight end? Who's the best wide receiver? Who's the best defensive? And you see D-Law in there, and they're all getting after it, and this, that. And then they go on the field, and they're like, okay, I don't care. Hey, what time's this game over with? I got a tea time.
Yeah, and I mean, for your side of things, it does look like Mike McCarthy will be retained just because Jerry Jones does not like to pay two coaches at the same time. And with next year being the final year of the McCarthy contract, I firmly believe that Jones is going to let him play that contract out and then kind of go from there. But I think Dallas missed an opportunity because with Bill Belichick on the market, this would have been your easy way out of Mike McCarthy by firing McCarthy and then bringing in Belichick. But for whatever reason, Jerry Jones must not feel the same, and he must be okay with just getting to the playoffs at this point and not getting any further.
Yeah, no, I agree. My only hope with him crying and him doing all the things that he did, my only hope is that Jared be like, yo, Mike, it's been fun. It's been real. But it's time to go.
Real fun.
Yeah, it had been real fun. It's time for you to go. And what I'm really hoping is that he'll do something that Jerry hasn't done, that he'll go the opposite direction and look for a guy that can, a Dan Campbell or a D'Amico Ryans, that can come in here and change a culture, change an atmosphere, get it back on the winning aspects, and do all the things that need to be done and not be a Jerry guy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that Jerry will hire a coach that's the right guy. He won't meddle. He'll work, because I do think Jerry is a good drafter. So I'm hoping that Jerry will work with the coach, draft the right people, and let this coach build a winning culture that Dallas has gotten away from since Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer left. Really more Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, and I mean, for as much success as the Cowboys have had, I found this just to be amazing yesterday that outside of Tom Landry and Jason Garrett, no coach has ever lasted for more than 5 years in Dallas.
Yeah. If I was Jerry, you know what I would really do? I mean, and he won't do it, but he should just give up all control. Let the GM hire a GM, hire a head coach, and let's try to go this at a different avenue. But that's not going to happen. He's just not the guy that's going to give up total control like that. And that's why it worries me with the Cowboys. But again, at the very least, if he could just bring in a Bill Belichick or a Harbaugh or, someone who has, championship expertise and things like that and has been successful at that level, and just give them the reins of the team and say, look, you got all the right pieces. I just need you to put the culture here and put your stamp on it, and let's get to the Super Bowl. And let them just do what they do. You know what I'm saying? That would be the best thing for this team. And let Dan Quinn, for the love of – keep Dan Quinn, but bring in the right coach that will keep Dan Quinn's feet to the fire. And when he sees Dan Quinn doing stuff like 5 and 10 yards off the receiver, kind of call him back into play.
And then the last game on Sunday was probably the best game of the entire week. And when you kind of look at how the other games went, and that was the Detroit Lions versus Los Angeles Rams. And before the game even started, you knew how good of a game this was going to be. You had the storyline of Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff basically switching teams for one another. Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit, the first ever playoff game at Ford Field, first playoff win possibly for the Lions in over 30 years. I mean, it was just so many storylines that went into play. And honestly, the game lived up to it. It wasn't as high scoring as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit more high scoring than 24-23, especially when you looked at it was 21-17 at the half. So I thought that was going to be like a 40-30 type of game, but credit to Detroit. I mean, what Dan Campbell has been able to do in his 3 years in that organization has been nothing short of amazing. You look at how the team finished last year, going 6-1 in their final 7 games last year, 12-5 this year. They're now 18-6 in their last 24 games, which is actually, get this, you're going to love this. This 18-6 record in their last 24 games is actually the best record in the NFC over a 24-game stretch, better than the 49ers, better than the Cowboys, better than the Eagles. So this is no longer a small sample size anymore with Detroit. They have been the most consistent and the best team in the NFC for the past year and a half. And if they find a way to get past Tampa Bay, which we'll talk about later on this week, depending on what happens on Saturday night, you could have the Detroit Lions not only playing to get to their first ever Super Bowl, but you could have the Detroit Lions possibly hosting the NFC Championship game. And with how that atmosphere was on Sunday, how that atmosphere is going to be this weekend against Tampa Bay, can you imagine how that atmosphere would be if they got to host the NFC Championship game?
Oh, that would be crazy. Yeah, that would and you know what? And that's the thing. I know we're talking Detroit now, and I told you, man, and I know you said that you had Detroit as your representative going to the Super Bowl. And the more I think about it, it doesn't sound as ludicrous as I was thinking at the beginning of the season, because Detroit has come a long way, man. This team has really got a really good 1-2 punch in the backfield. Aiden Hutchinson and company and Garner Johnson, whatever his name is, he's doing a good job in the secondary. I mean, their defense is coming on, their culture's coming on, Goff's coming on. You got that little small, skinny kid, number 10, Shaquille, or whatever that guy's name is, coming out of that third read after Laporta and St. Brown. And a lot of people are coming out of nowhere, stepping up and contributing to this team. And you don't got to be the best team to win the Super Bowl. You just got to be the most hottest team, the most in sync team, the most hungriest team in football to win the Super Bowl. And I'll tell you, this Dan Campbell team is looking pretty damn good. Now, don't get me wrong, man. When they play San Francisco, if they get to that level, or a team like San Francisco, yes, it's going to be a dogfight. But I got to be honest with you, man. I really think that they, I have a strong feeling that they will beat. With Green Bay, they're playing, correct?
Detroit's playing Tampa.
Or Tampa even better. Not to discredit what Tampa just did to the Eagles, but I'm just saying this Detroit team, they're going to have a fight on their hands for sure, because Tampa's going to come in, and we'll talk more about that on Thursday. But they have a legitimate shot. They really do, to get to the Super Bowl. They have but it's all going to come down to them staying healthy and continuing to do what they're doing on the field and keep that chemistry going, that momentum going.
Yeah, now we'll switch over to Monday, where we were treated by 2 games on Monday just because Mother Nature decided it did not want Buffalo to play on Sunday at all because they just wanted to snow all day. But you had the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers in action on Monday afternoon. And when you looked at this matchup, Josh Allen versus a third-string Mason Rudolph, well, you already put into perspective that Buffalo was going to be heavy favorites. And then you look at some of the scores over the weekend. If there was going to be a 45-14 type of game, this was, I think, the game that everyone expected to be 45-14 when you just look at the matchup on paper, who Pittsburgh had starting, who Buffalo had starting. And yes, it was 31-17, but to the Steelers' credit, they were within 7 points until midway through that fourth quarter. And after falling down 21-0, they really shut that Buffalo Bills offense down for almost 3 quarters and found a way to battle back into the game. And that just goes to show you the type of coach that Mike Tomlin is. And 17 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the guy has never had a losing season. Granted, he hasn't had much playoff success in the past 8 or 9 years, but I'm going to make the case that this was Mike Tomlin's best coaching job that he's ever done with the Pittsburgh Steelers, when you had to look at the amount of injuries and the amount of quarterback changes he had to go with and just everything that he had to deal with this season to get this team to be 10-7, to get him into the playoffs. This was Mike Tomlin's best coaching job by far. And if Pittsburgh lets him go for whatever reason, it's a huge mistake on their part.
Yeah, that Steelers team really, did themselves a disservice that first, quarter and a half. Or actually, it's really the first quarter. They had some turnovers and things like that really led to points. They just kind of got off to a slow start that first quarter, and the Bills came out like Tampa came out against the Phillies. They came out red hot. They came out ready to handle business in their home stadium. Bills Mafia was out there, and they just couldn't match the intensity, of that first quarter. Now, Mason Rudolph did not have a bad game per se, because the guy went 229, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. So it's not like he was, terrible or anything. I felt like because they came out to such a fast start in that first quarter, that really made it hard for them to get the running game going with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Because I think they felt like they had to do some catch-up ball, and they were trying to make things happen to will themselves and get the momentum back in their favor. And I think sometimes when you do that, and you tend to get away from things. And I think when you look at that second half, you saw a Steelers team, or at least at the end of that second quarter, when they got to 7 points and it was 21-7 going into the half, I think Pittsburgh felt like, okay, we got points on the board. We got a little bit of momentum on us now. Now we can just settle in. We'll come back that third quarter, and so forth. And I think, like you said, they got within 7, but they just couldn't ultimately get the job done towards the end. But hell of a good fight from the Steelers, man. In the wide receiver game, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Pickens cough up a fumble, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, Pickens had a fumble, which led to Buffalo's second touchdown. And then
they just had a lot of things go against them in that first quarter that just set a really hard tone for the Steelers to come back from. But I got to give them mad props and mad respect for battling back, trying to get back into it, trying to make it a game. But ultimately, Buffalo was just a little too much for them.
And that is one thing that you can always say about a Mike Tomlin coach team is, from a talent standpoint, they may never be the most talented team out there. They're not going to have the best quarterback. They're not going to have the best skill players, but they fight. And they will fight for 60 minutes. They will fight for that man, because for any team in the NFL to have a coach for more than a decade, let alone having the same coach in your organization for 17 years, never have a losing season, that just shows you the amount of trust that organization has in Mike Tomlin. And it just shows you that no matter the circumstances, he's going to get the most out of his players. And even if this is the end of the road for him in Pittsburgh or whatever, some team's going to give him another chance, whether it's next year or if he takes a year off and then tries to come back again. Some team's going to give him another chance, and I expect him to go to another organization then and do pretty much just what he's done in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And if Mike Tomlin decides to leave, hey, I know Jerry's not going to pull the trigger on it, but I wouldn't mind having a coach like Mike Tomlin come to the Cowboys, and take over this team. I think what he would bring to the table in terms of discipline, in terms of getting the dog back in the fight and all the things that they need to do, that would be the guy that I would want. And he's young enough and viable enough that he could be there for a while. So, I would implore Jerry to go out and get him. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But I would love to see it happen.
And then the final game of the weekend was the Monday night tilt between Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, and 32-9 was the final score. Baker Mayfield looked like an MVP. Jalen Hurts looked like a rookie quarterback with a deer in the headlights look. The Eagles lost 6 of 7 to end the season. That includes 5 of 6 to end the regular season, and a team that was sitting at 10-1 at one point, looking like they were going to run away with the NFC. Basically limped to the finish line, and they continued to limp last night and got completely blown out by the Buccaneers. Now you have Nick Sirianni possibly losing his job because he lost that entire team, and you could tell last night how they played, and you could tell that for a while. But, don't take anything past Tampa Bay, because you're going to continuously hear these arguments that a 9-8 team should not be in the playoffs. A 9-8 team should not get a home game over a team that's 11-6, but Tampa Bay banked on a pretty weak division. They won their division, so by winning their division, they earned the home game. But they did win their final 3 games of the regular season because they were sitting at 6-8 at one point. So it's not like they weren't playing pretty good football just to get into the playoffs, and now you've seen this time and time again. Teams that are playing their best football heading into the playoffs are the ones that are the most dangerous, and right now Tampa Bay is playing their best football of the season, and you saw that on both sides of the ball last night against Philly.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct on that. We saw it last night against Philly, so you're definitely not wrong there. It just, I got to be honest, man. It's just, Philly, man, Philly. It was bad. When one of my co-hosts is Philly Sports Guy, and when Philly Sports Guy is getting roasted on TikTok by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh, what a great day it is. It's just It's a beautiful day. And I love Philly. Philly, you know I love you. You're my co-host. I love you, Philly. But come on, baby. You in the NFC East. You know, hey, look, you know if I'm out, misery loves company, and I got and your couch spot, it's already there. I've told you that. You've accepted it. You said you want a steak. You didn't want popcorn, and I'm going to hook you up. But what a time to be alive, man. Honestly, you know, and we all know this. Now, I can't say nothing because, you know, there's some things going on within that Philly locker room that I think in the next few weeks, if not sooner, could possibly come to light. But this Philly team wasn't right when they went into it. This Philly team hasn't been right over the last month.
Yeah.
The last month. Think about it. This is a team that came out on a meteoric rise. I mean, they were riding high. That last month, they took a 90 or 180 degree nosedive straight into the playoffs, and it showed. And that's the point of the matter. This team, number one, psychologically was already out of the game.
Yep.
They didn't even show up.
That's the key too. That I think why a lot of people are questioning Nick Sirianni's job security right now. It's like you were sitting at 10-1, and all of a sudden you got blown out by the 49ers, and you lost to the Dallas Cowboys, and your decision was to remove Sean Desai as your defensive coordinator and put Matt Patricia in as your defensive coordinator, and then the defense looked even worse after you made that move. So a lot of people are like, was Sean Desai that much worse than Matt Patricia, or what was your reasoning to make that move? And then when you had a guy in Brian Johnson, I believe that's his name, Brian Johnson, calling the plays, why didn't you take over the play calling duties if you knew that the offense was struggling as much as it did? Because for whatever reason, these coordinators had no idea how to call a game down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it definitely shows. Without a question and a shadow of a doubt, man, it definitely shows. I'm curious. I would not at all, because we talked about this on the show earlier today, I would not be surprised at all if we see some serious changes go on over this offseason with Philadelphia. I mean, I think you see players get moved. Mm-hmm. I think you see coaches get moved. I do not believe that the Philadelphia Eagles team that we just saw yesterday will be the same team that takes the field come spring training or preseason. I don't believe it will be. I think there's going to be some serious moves on that team.
And that one move that we know is going to be happening is going to be Travis Kelce has officially retired from the NFL. He pretty much let his team know that after the game last night, but made it public this morning that he would be hanging it up after 13 years in the league and at 36 years old. And I just want to say congratulations on a great career, because he is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in 5 years once he's eligible to be on that ballot. He's been one of the best centers in the league for the past decade, and he's one of 5 centers all time I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but he's one of 5 centers all time to accomplish something, and the other 4 ahead of him are Hall of Famers. So, Jason, you're on your way to Canton, so your playing days are over, but your football legacy is definitely not over.
Oh, absolutely. 150% absolutely.
And then the last topic we're going to touch on today before we get off is the whole coaching situation right now with all the job openings. We've heard rumors of certain coaches interviewing at certain places. I think right now there's 2 jobs that are going to be basically taken by the end of today. Well, maybe not the end of today. I'll say by the end of Thursday. I think Jim Harbaugh will be the Chargers head coach on Thursday. I know there's a lot of talk of him possibly going to the Raiders, but Max Crosby's made it pretty clear that if you do not bring Antonio Pierce back, that he wants to be traded. So I think that's pretty much a notice enough by the Raiders that you better bring Antonio Pierce back or you might be losing your best player. So I think Jim Harbaugh ends up in the Chargers, and I do think Bill Belichick will end up with Atlanta, because for Belichick to go to a situation like Atlanta, and we've said this on our program numerous times, the only way that we saw Bill Belichick continuing to coach is if he went somewhere where they had a veteran quarterback and like a quarterback that's had a very good career so far. So for him to go to Atlanta when you have Desmond Ridder, who doesn't appear to be the answer in Atlanta, it makes me think that Atlanta either A, wants to trade for that number 1 pick and get a guy like Caleb Williams, B, try to trade with the Chicago Bears and get Justin Fields because that's who Bill Belichick wanted 4 years ago anyways, or C, go and get a veteran like Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins, and that's why I think Atlanta ultimately is going to bring in Bill Belichick. He's going to give his input on who he wants at quarterback, and they're going to go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, jeez, man. There's a lot of coaching carousels that are out there for the most part. You know, Dan Quinn, for one.
He'll go to Seattle, I think.
Watch this. This is what I love. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, right? Tampa, I think, was. I've heard of. There's like 3 or 4 different. There's 4 teams right now that I know. There's 4 teams right now that I know that have reached out to Dan Quinn. Mm-hmm. And I want to say Tampa was one of them. I want to say Seattle. You're right. I think Seattle was one. I think Atlanta. No, not Atlanta.
Well, he came from.
Yeah, I'm about to say not Atlanta. But here's my thing. Good riddance. Hey, if I wish I could give a 2-for-1 deal. Like, hey, if you take Dan Quinn, you also got to take Mike McCarthy with him. Like, they come as a traveling pair. You know, that would be great. Because quite honestly, if I could do a 3-for-1 and put Kyle Shanahan in that as well, then I'd be doing amazing. I tell you what, you cannot have my special teams coach. I got to keep my special teams guy.
Fossil.
Yeah, I'm keeping my special teams guy. But everybody else, all the coordinators, head coach, God, if I could throw Jerry Jones in there, I'd throw his ass in there.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one for you. Let's just say Dan Quinn leaves, and I'm just going to throw a team out there. Let's just say he leaves and takes the Seattle job, which is where I ultimately think he's going to go. Would you be okay with Dallas bringing in Mike Vrabel as the defensive coordinator?
Yes. Yeah. I think Vrabel has a young mind. I think he's obviously come from good lineage out there under Bill Belichick and company. Would I bring him in? Sure. The coordinator. The coordinator spot really is not my biggest concern right now. My biggest concern is the head coach, because you can have the best coordinators, but if that head coach is crap, you're not going to go anywhere. And so, I need a head coach. That's what I need. I need to get rid of antiquated Mike McCarthy, and I need to bring in somebody that can change the culture, because I need a culture change. I don't just need a coaching change. I need a culture change. I need a Jimmy Johnson culture brought back to Dallas. That's what I need. And I don't think just getting a coordinator is going to fulfill that. I think Vrabel would fit in nice into a new culture that would be, open to change, open to trying new things, rather than just the same antiquated play calling and line reading that we've gotten in the past. So bring in. Like I said, a Harbaugh would be perfect. If you had a Harbaugh and a Vrabel, or a Mike Tomlin and a Vrabel, and then of course you still got to look for the offensive guy, and we can talk about that later. But that would be a good head start. Mike Harbaugh or Tomlin, or even a Bieniemy, man, for crying out loud, as an offensive coordinator or as a head coach, I'd be willing to give him a shot. We just got to change the culture from what we got, and I don't know if Belichick. I'd bring in a Bill Belichick. I know that him and Jerry are friends, Yeah.
I just don't think Bill Belichick will go into that situation because Jerry Jones wants complete control over everything. And I think that's the biggest problem with the Cowboys organization is Jerry Jones wants to be the owner. Jerry Jones wants to be the president. Jerry Jones wants to be the GM. Jerry Jones wants to be the head coach. Like, he wants to be everything in that organization. Bill Belichick's not going to put up with that. If you bring in Bill Belichick, he's going to make it perfectly clear, like, I'm the coach, you're the owner. You do the owner things, you let me do the coaching things. And I just don't – it's as logical of a fit as it is, because I do think it's a very logical fit for Bill Belichick. I just don't see it happening because of how Jerry Jones is. Just because that would just be a marriage that is set up to fail instantly, because those two guys would be butting heads left and right every single day. And that's why I think Jerry Jones needs to basically just give up everything. He needs to own the team. He needs to let his son take over the GM duties. He just needs to kind of own the team, sit back, and let his son kind of maybe start running the team. And once that happens, I think Dallas will be on a better track to get a Super Bowl championship quicker than if he's there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have any disagreements there. I don't. And I think you're right. The problem with Bill Belichick would be the same problem as Jimmy Johnson all over again, because Jimmy didn't want to be told what to do by Jerry. And ain't no way in hell Bill Belichick's going to want to be told what to do by Jerry. So, yeah, you're right. And that's the only downside to bringing a guy like Belichick in. As great of a coach as he is great. Just the dynamic of him and Jerry working together just doesn't seem appealing to, I don't think, either one of them. Because they are two alpha males, like hardcore alpha males.
Yeah. Well, it's all the time Jay and I got for you today. We will be back on Thursday to discuss the upcoming the upcoming divisional round of the playoffs and who we see making it to the conference championship game. And then later this week, we will also have another redraft. I believe we're on the 2020 redraft. Am I correct on that?
Yep, you are correct.
Awesome, and thanks for hopping on to another edition of Unscripted here on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network.